2 of Organic Sanskrit. And I see my friends, Kathy von Geneken and Amirta here, and I owe you great apologies. I am going to work on things this week, I promise. And I'm glad to see you here. Now, Geshe Michael says that when he studied Sanskrit, they started with 60 students in the class. And by the end of the time of study, there were 2 left and then 1 left. So you are very brave people, and I am delighted to see you here. And let's see how it goes. It's a wild ride, Sanskrit 2. Okay. So we have about 15, 16 people. And I think I saw the language groups. We have Russian, English, Chinese, and Ukrainian. So we'll try to make accommodations for those languages in some of our examples. So could I have the first slide, please? Not the title slide, but the content slide, the next one. Next one. We just did that. Okay. So who remembers the primal sound of Sanskrit? Open your mics and tell me, what is it? Say that again. Everybody say not ah. One more time. Great. Good, good. Everybody's vocal cords warmed up now. All right. Now, what letter is that?
Wow.
No.
Vowels?
No, it is the first letter in the vowel list. And what letter is that? It's the letter A. So we pronounce it in Sanskrit, And why is that the most important letter? You remember that vowels are called svara, and svara means flow or vowel. And the letter is the first sound and the first vowel. And that's because all the other vowels flow from That's how you make them. Now, another important thing, question? One more important thing is that all the consonants in Sanskrit automatically have the letter attached to them. And the only reason they don't have it is because you put some other letter, some other vowel deliberately in there. But otherwise, they automatically, as a default, have the letter A. And also, let's see. Oh, yes. It's so important that when you have consonants and you don't see a vowel, that's because it's the letter A and it's implied because it's automatically connected to all the consonants unless you take it away and put another vowel there. So what is your opinion? Are vowels or consonants more important in Sanskrit from what we've learned?
The vowels are more important.
Why do you say that?
Recording in progress.
Because without a vowel, you can't make a sound.
You can't make any sound at all. And also, it's a flow. It's like the energy that flows in our body. In our tradition, we're trying to remove blocks, remove stoppages from all of our energy, all of our prana, and channel everything into the central channel. So the flow of vowels, as opposed to the stopping of consonants, is what we feel is very important. If you guys have any questions, just break in and ask. All right, you know what's next. We're going to recite the Svara song. What does Svara mean again? Next slide, please. We just reviewed a little bit what Svara means, but it was a long time ago. Svara means vowel. And the first vowel is which we call A. So you know I can't sing, so we're going to try it. I'll recite it once, and then I want us all to recite it. Maybe we can be helped by the next slide, Marina. All right, here are the vowels. So we're going to sing it. I'll go first. I, u, r, lir, lir. A, I, O, ow, All right, everybody help me out because you're much better singers than I am. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Open your mics.
Uh, uh, e,
R, R,
Lil,
A, I, O, Good, very good. You guys are excellent. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. And I know you remember this one. What is a varga? Does anybody remember? Yes. A varga is a word that means class or group. And in the alphabet, there are 5 vargas, and they all have to do with the position of your tongue inside your mouth. So we're going to briefly go over these using the vowels as examples, although all the consonants have vargas too. So the first mouth position, number 1, is called guttural. And that means it's in your throat. So you fold your tongue in half and stick it all the way in the back of your throat. And you say the letter everyone say good. And your tongue is way back there, right? Okay, next position is palatal, second varga. And there you put the tip of your tongue against that hard bump in the back of your upper throat, mouth. And you say, the letter Everybody say, good, good, good. Now, the next position is number 3, and this is the cerebral tongue position. And that means you stick the tip of your tongue up into the top of your head, into your brain, cerebral. So we're going to say the letter there. That's good. Put your tongue up on the middle of your roof of your mouth and say ar. That's the hard one. The dental position is behind the back of your teeth. And there we're going to say the vowel lir. So put the tip of your tongue behind your teeth and say lir. 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 Good. And the last one is labial. So that is where you make a kissing motion with your mouth. You put your lips together and say ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Great. All right, so that's a quick review of the vargas. Next slide, please. So here are the consonants. And I've listed the vargas on the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We just went over them, but now this is where the consonants come. And these are the 25 main consonants. And the first varga, where you put your tongue in the back of your throat, is guttural. So I'll say them first and then you say them. It's k, k, g, g, n. Say.
Ka,
Good. Second varga is, and we remember that when you see this letter C in Sanskrit, it's always cha. So it's, you put your tongue on the bump in the back of your mouth and say cha, cha, dra, cha, na. Everyone say.
cha, 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 na.
Very good. Now the third varga is cerebral. So you put your tongue straight up to your brain and say these letters. I'll say them first. Ta, ta, da, da, na. Go ahead.
Ka, cha, na.
Very good. And then our favorite, the dentals. There's more like English and more like European languages. So let's put our tongues behind our front teeth and say ta, ta, da, da, na. Come on.
Ta, ta, da, ta, na.
Excellent. And the last is also quite European. So we'll put our lips together and say pa, pa, ba, ba, ma.
Pa,
Ma.
Good. All right, and one more bit of review. The next slide, please. These are the semivowels. And as you probably remember, they are letters that can be either consonants or vowels. And they are transitional letters in between things. So we know that Sanskrit is a sound-based language, and we will be seeing how we use these transitional letters in texts that we will examine to make the connections between words sound better. But let's briefly go over them. The first varga, which is the guttural varga, where your tongue is all the way in the back of your throat, has no semivowel. There are only 4. So the palatal position with the tongue on the tip of that bump in the back of your mouth is ga, ga. Say ga. Ga. Yes. Now the cerebral position has the R sound, and here it's not a vowel like er. Here it's a regular consonant, so we say ra, ra, with the tip of the tongue up. Ra,
Ra.
ra. So notice the difference between the vowel er and the consonant ra, which has a attached All right, now the fourth varga is dental. So we're going to put our tongues behind our teeth and say la,
La.
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 And I welcome our Chinese friends and Vietnamese speakers to practice that one a little extra. Put your tongue behind your teeth and say la.
La.
Good. La. La. And the fifth varga has a semivowel va. So you're going to put your lips together and say va, va, va.
va,
And some people who study Sanskrit pronounce it more like a wa. And Geshe goes in between, back and forth. The wa is more Vedic and the va is more classical. So let's have the next slide. Okay, so we're going to review more over the next few classes, but right now let's dive into some Sanskrit. So we'll take the next slide. Now, this is a verse from the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, which is the Bodhisattva's way of life. We studied a verse from that last semester, and we're going to study more today. This term. So today we're going to start with verse 3, chapter 3, verse 25. And this is the Sanskrit. Now, the top line, 2 lines, is Devanagari. And the lines on the bottom are Ayast. And you will remember that the Devanagari is the characters and script, the alphabet, the Abugida that Sanskrit is written in. And the IAS, the International Association of Sanskrit Transliteration, is the way we take those characters and put them in Roman alphabets so that Westerners can more easily read it. So the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara is written in verse, as we know. So each line here is broken into 2 parts. And we will have 8 beats per section of the line. So each line will be 16 beats, but each half line will be 8. So I will recite it first, and then we will recite it together. Adya me saphalam janma sulabdo manusho bhava. Let's recite that together. Adya me saphalam janma sulabdo manusho bhava. And the second line, Adya Buddha Kule Jato Buddha Putro Smi Sampratam. Let's do that together. Adya Buddha Kule Jato Buddha Putro Smi Sampratam. Great. All right, let's go to the next line. Slide, thank you. So this is a very interesting situation because, as you know, Geshe Michael is translating the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara in the mixed nuts. So every few weeks, this text comes up for translation. And it came up, I think it was February 10th, and Seiji is translating it in Tibetan, but we're using the Sanskrit also. And this is very interesting because the mixed nuts translations are not final. We get to see a scholar, Geshe Michael, translating Sanskrit live. So I captured this from the class. And as you can see, this is not a polished translation yet in English. This is not the final translation. This is a rough translation, a working translation. That's Geshe Michael translating these words live in a very rough form. But we can learn a lot about translation from seeing how he is working with this verse. So the way the translation currently stands is it means this: today, my life has meaning. Only now, my human life, the fact that I was born a human, only today does it have some importance. Why? Because today I have become a son or daughter of the Buddhas. Geshe Michael said, you're in a new family now. Now I am there. I'm a bodhisattva. And all he did was promise to be one. So now I will, no matter what, act in accordance with my new family. So does this sentiment sound familiar to anyone in the class? Have you heard this kind of thinking yet before?
I think yes.
Yes, and where have you heard it?
I heard this in one improvement in Bodhisattva's medicine Bodhisattva.
Okay.
Buddha Bodhisattva.
Yes.
Something like that.
Something like that. Very, very good. This is actually, yes, Elena says vows. This is actually some language that we speak when we take vows. It's from the vow ceremony, as Andreas says. So basically, this is the source of this beautiful language, which is part of the Bodhisattva vows. And here is a very rough translation of how Geshe Michael is thinking of this new translation of the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. So let's go to the next slide. One of the main passions that Geshe Michael has in teaching, at least Sanskrit, because I don't know about the Tibetan teaching, is roots. So there are two kinds of roots that Geshe Michael talks about, and it's easy to get these confused. There are Sanskrit roots, and there are Indo-European roots. Now, why are roots important? They are the basic parts of a word that help you learn a language. And a root can appear in an actual word in many different forms. But if you can find the root in a word, you will probably know what that word means without having to look it up. And you can more easily translate when you learn roots and you learn about roots. Let's go to the next slide. So the first kind of root is Sanskrit roots, and this applies only to the Sanskrit language. So usually Sanskrit roots have 3 letters, and it's called a triliteral, from tri meaning 3, and literal meaning letters. Those are Greek roots. But it's not unusual to have 1-letter Sanskrit roots, 2-letter, 4-letter, even 5-letter Sanskrit roots. Now, the word root in Sanskrit is dhatu, dhatu. And when we have a root, we use a mathematical sign, the root sign, the square root of some number, or we can use a slash because it's easier on the keyboard to signify a root. You can find that root symbol in MS Word under Insert and then Advanced Symbols if you want to look for it to put in your texts. So here is an example of the root us with the root symbol and also with the slash. The root us is to be. And it's in our verse, which is why I chose it. Now, from a dhatu, from a root, you can make both verbs and nouns. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So here is the first line, or actually it's the second line in our verse. Can anybody find the root us in these words?
Ask me,
Yes. Who said that? Was that
Irina.
Elena? Irina. Irina or Elena?
Irina.
Irina. That is the root us in this sentence. So as we noted, when you have a root, the words it creates can take many different forms, and they don't always have to look too much like the root. But this is the only possibility in this line because of the combination of consonants and vowels that we will take another look at in a moment. So there are not many roots in this verse, so I chose the one that I saw there. Next slide, please. So here it is in the Devanagari, and here it is in the I asked. Next slide. If you look at the Devanagari, you see a very strange mark there. I've circled it. It's called an avagraha. And it looks like an English S, capital, a big capital S. And what it does is it indicates when you lose an from a word. Now, let's talk a little bit about why we're studying this at this moment. Some key features of organic Sanskrit, which is what the way Geshe likes to teach languages, is that we're learning this language in order to read texts. So this means we study what comes up in our text, and we don't study a rigid grammar book that teaches us comprehensive things in some particular scholarly order. Yes, Andreas asked a question, is it only a that is lost? With an avagraha, yes. Lost a is marked with avagraha. So we're going to be looking at what comes up in our texts, even if it's something that might not be taught early in a traditional grammar class, because this is organic Sanskrit. So here we are examining a verbal root, which I told you is us, but you don't really have any indication in that I asked that it's us. It's the root of the word to be. So we want to find it in the text. and it has this unusual marker of agraha. And why? Well, Sanskrit is a sound-based language. So we have to drop the letter make it sound better. Let's go to the next slide. So here is the text, and I've put in the missing letters. It says, Buddha putro asmi, meaning I am a son or daughter of the Buddha. Because it's a sound-based language, in Sanskrit, you can't say putro asmi. We can say it, but it sounds wrong to a Sanskrit speaker. So you have to say putrosmi. And you need a mark to show the missing vowel, an avagraha. And if you didn't know this, it would be very hard to find us in that line. So this will help us get used to how the language changes, how it's written, depending on how it sounds. So let's take the next slide. So the Sanskrit root is us. It's the root of the verb to be, and it's very irregular. Next slide. Here it is. So it's an active verb. And in Sanskrit, we have 3 numbers for each verb: singular, dual, and plural. So you may be familiar with this other structure: first person, second person, third person in other languages. The first person is I in the singular. The second person is you. And the third person is he, she, or it. So let's say these verbal forms. Can someone read those for me? Read the first person across.
I
The-
can try.
Yes, try. That's what we're here for.
Asmi, swaha,
Yeah.
smaha.
Yes. Now, who wants to read the second person?
I'm happy to do that.
Good.
Asi, staha,
Yeah.
sta.
Good. And how about the third person? Someone is brave. Come on, I know.
All right. I will.
Yes.
Asti, ta, sta, santi.
Santi. Good. Okay. So these are the forms of the verb to be. So the first person singular would be I am. The dual would be both of us are. And the plural would be a lot of us are. We are. So it's I am, we two are, or we many are. Now, the second person would be you are, asi. You two both are, and many of you are. And the third person is he, she, or it is. The dual would be they too are, and the plural would be they many are. So that's just an example of a Sanskrit verb form. And this structure will hold for all verbs. All right, next slide. Let's talk a little bit more about roots. We talked about Sanskrit roots just now, But what are Indo-European roots? These are Geshe-la's two favorite root topics in all his classes. Well, first of all, what is Indo-European? Some of you may know, but it's a very ancient language that gave rise to many European languages, all European languages. Chinese, Vietnamese, and Semitic languages, however, are not Indo-European. So they don't share that same system of common roots that informs all other European languages. So Indo-European dates back to around 1700 BCE and even farther, but we don't have much written material beyond that period. And we don't have any paper or birch bark or anything. We do have some stone carvings. So that's what we know about this from. We don't really know who spoke it. We don't know too much about what it looked like in terms of the alphabet. I like to think of Indo-European as a mythical language that was recreated by linguists to explain everything that came after it. I mean, we do have evidence of it, but we don't really know much about it. It's buried in the sands of time. So when you're citing an Indo-European root, you will usually find the abbreviation IE, meaning Indo-European. So if you look into Sanskrit much more with us, you will see that abbreviation often used. So as a language, Indo-European is older than Sanskrit, and it is the mother of Sanskrit. And there's a lot of scholarly material on Indo-European, Proto-Indo-European, and other kinds of Indo-European. But for our purposes, let's just be aware of the history of it and why it's important. Next slide. Okay, here's our verse again. Now, I want you to look for an Indo-European root in this verse that is called su. Can anyone find that in this verse?
Is it the sa?
Nope. Good choice, but that's not it.
In the Manu show?
No, that's in reverse order. Plus, it has a different.
No, I thought the show would have changed sound.
Yeah.
But it's not a is, right? It's a
That's-
show.
No. I'll give you a hint. It's combined with something else in one of the words.
Sulabdo.
Yes, that's it. Sulabdo. Remember, that's a long O. Always A's, I's, O's, and Ows are always held for 2 beats. Better watch out. I have my drum here if we ever get to it.
Sulabdo.
Sulabdo. Okay, so this root in Indo-European is either su or esu, and you see that the E is in parentheses because it sometimes appears and it doesn't. With roots, you find a lot of transition letters, and you find a lot of changes in how the root moves. And you have to be a linguist to really understand this, and we are not. So we're just going to take the surface level and talk about the basics of roots. The meaning of this root, su or esu, is good, positive, well-being, pleasing, something nice. So in Sanskrit, Esu gives rise to sukha, which is a word meaning good. We know it in sukhasana and many other Sanskrit words. And it basically means runs well. And it was designed to describe a chariot that had nice round wheels with good holes in them for the axles to go through. So you can imagine if a chariot had a badly carved wheel hole and you stuck an axle through it and tried to drive it, you'd get a very rough ride. So a sukha is a nicely going chariot, a good moving wheel. Now, some words in English that come from su, and you can see here that sometimes we lose the S and sometimes we keep it, are euphoria and sweet. So the Greek word derived from Indo-European for good is EU. The Sanskrit word derived from esu, good, is su. So that's just a taste of Indo-European roots. Let's go to the next syllable. I mean, the next slide. If you really want to learn about Indo-European roots, a lovely man named Calvert Watkins wrote a dictionary of them. It's called the American Heritage Dictionary of Indo-European Roots. And you can use it to find different roots and a lot of cognates. A cognate is a word that is made out of a root. So it sounds like, or looks like, or reflects that root. Okay. So we've come a little early to the end of our class, and I'm going to ask Marina to go back to the text, and we're going to look at a few more things. So Marina, can you go back to, I think it's slide 10. It says a verse from the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. One couple more. No, back more. Yes, there, you just passed it. Yeah. One more. Yeah, right there. All right, so let's go through this a little more and talk about the IAST version of this verse. So let's say it again. I will say the first line first, and then you can repeat after me. Adya me sapalam janma sulabdo manusho bhava. Say it with me. Adya me sapalam janma
Sulabdo manasho hava.
Ajamisa palam janma sulabdho manusho bhavaha.
bhava. Okay, now let's take that apart a little bit. In the first line, Adya me sapalam janma sulabdo manusho bhava. How many long vowels are there in that line?
Oh,
I'm sorry, say again.
oh,
4. Yes. Who is that speaking, please? I can't see your picture.
Andreas.
Oh, that's Andreas. Okay. Andreas, which are the 4 long vowels?
Me sulabdho manusho.
Give me the vowel.
Manusho.
Which
Sorry, only the vowel
just the
E,
vowel?
E, R, O.
O,
E, R, O.
All right, I'm a little confused, and you're absolutely correct, but the words that have the long vowels, give me the words and then tell me which is the long vowel.
So me is the A.
The A is long, right.
Yeah. Sulabdo, the O.
Labdo, the O is long.
Manusho, A and O.
Yes, and that's 4. So I will get out the feared drum now. So we know that short vowels have 1 beat and long vowels have 2 beats. So let's say this verse one more time with the long and short vowels. Ad, ya, me, sa, pa, lam, jan, ma. Su, lab, do, ma, nu, sho, ba, va. So, adya me, sa, palam, janma, sulabdo manusho bhava. And we can say, we'll get to that in a minute. But this is the way we count the verse beats. So adya me sa palam janma. That's 8 beats. If you pronounced may with a short beat, you'd only get 7 beats and you wouldn't have a poetic sounding line. So it's very important for many reasons to hold the vowels as long as they need to be held in Sanskrit. And sulabdo manusho bhava. That is also 8 beats. Sulabdo manusho bhava. Now, someone said when pronouncing bhava, bhavaha, and that is an excellent way to pronounce that final letter H, which has a dot under it. But for purposes of the verse, we're going to just make a rough breathing and not use 2 syllables for that. So if we count the verse with the long syllables, how many beats are there in this verse?
Seven.
In the first half, I get 9. Adya me, that's 2. Sa palam janma. And how about the second half?
So Christina, I get 11. I'm confused.
Oh, do you walk me through that?
So
Marina,
I'm not sure if you mean by 1 beat is 1 syllable. So so is 1, la is 2, do is 2, so that's 4 already. Then you've got 2 for ma, nu, that's another 3, so is another 2, so that's another 5, 4 and 5, that makes 9, and then bava, another 2.
oh, yes. In the second half, it is. What is the first half?
9.
Yes. So it's 9 and 11. Now, what about the second verse there? Adya Buddha Kule Jato.
11.
11. And what
Yep.
about Buddha Putro?
10, I'm thinking 10.
I think 10 as well. 10, says Marina. So basically, we see that the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara is poetically varied between 9 and 11 beats per verse. So it's something to consider as we move through this. Now, tell me a little bit about the consonants in this line as well. What is that final H at the very end of the first line, bhavaha? Does anyone remember what we call that?
Forgot.
I'm sorry?
Forgotten.
Well, there's
Consonant.
a dot under the H. Is that what you mean?
So you're saying, is it a vowel or a consonant? Is that what
Well,
you're asking?
that is what I'm asking.
So it's a vowel.
It's a vowel. Thank you. And if we recite the vowels, let's do that one more time. Let's sing the vowel song. All right, everybody together. You have to memorize this. I, I, u. One more time. I, I, u.
Ler, ler,
Er, lir,
I, O,
oh.
uh-huh,
Okay, this is the aha.
uh-huh.
And it's a noun ending for a word bhava. So it tells us, and we'll get to this in the next few classes, what case the noun is. But it's actually a vowel marker that we call visarga. And I think you may remember this from the last class. But visarga is something that helps us know how to combine letters when words are written. And we went through a little bit of this. It's a transitional grammar element called sandhi when we went through the M's and N's in the last class. Like when you take the word Sanskrit, it's actually written with an M, but when it's transliterated, we change it to an N because of the letter that comes after it. So visarga is often a vowel marking that we have to change when we're writing it because of sandhi. So let's see some other items in this line. What is that S letter in manusho? Who remembers what that dot under the S means? In the IAS, go ahead.
Always sh.
It means sh, you pronounce it sh, and Natalia wrote in the chat why you pronounce it sh. It is a marker for the cerebral varga. Which varga is that?
Third.
Third varga. And is, well, when you pronounce that sh, where do you put your tongue?
Cerebral. Up to the brain.
Up to the brain. So you say shra, shra, manusho. So that is why you pronounce it with a sh and not a plain S. Now look in the line below that. There are two dental S's. Which ones are the dental S's in that last part of the second line?
Asmi.
Sme and another one.
Tam,
Pratham.
Sampra,
Pratham.
no, sampratam. That's
Pratham.
plain dental S. Sampratam. All right. Now, another test of what we remember. In sampratam, what is under the letter M?
A dot.
Okay, and does that mean it's cerebral?
No, it's a vowel.
It's a vowel marker under that M because it makes it nasal, like It's a vowel marker, and that M, if we were to write it in Sandhi form, would that be an M or would it change to another nasal?
N.
One at a time. Say, Natalia says N. I'm going to say no. Does anybody have another idea?
No, before pa, it's M.
Perfect. So what varga is pa?
The last one,
The fifth varga, labial.
labial, yeah.
And what is the nasal letter in the fifth varga?
Ma.
Ma. So in this case, it's going to stay an M. So if we had something like samdana, just plain duh behind my teeth, what letter would that M change to?
Na.
Plain na, nasal na. Right, because there are 5 nasal letters. M, N, N, and M. I left one out, but you know what I mean. So they change to an M or an N of one of the other vargas, depending on what the following consonant is. So that is something we learned last time with Anusvara Sandhi. So we'll go over some of these things again. Does anyone have any questions of any kind?
Christina, sorry, can I ask?
Yes.
You said the dot under, is it any letter? If that's not true, right? The dot under the letters usually means it is third varga.
Yes, that's exactly right. If you have a dot under a letter, it's third varga, except for these two that we just went over, which is the visarga, the final H, which is a vowel marker, and under the M, because there is no M in the third varga. So it also then now becomes a vowel marker, because what it does is nasalize the vowel that comes before it and affect the consonant that comes after it. So those are the two exceptions to the concrete rule that a dot under a letter in IAST means cerebral.
Thank you, that's perfect.
Yeah, so there are 5 cerebral letters in the fifth varga. What are they? Anyway, I don't want to put you on the spot, Andreas, but feel free to answer.
It's t, d, d, n.
T, tr, d, d, and n are the 5 cerebrals. Yeah. And they will have dots under them in IAST, as well as the Visarga and the Anusvara. All right. Any other questions today? I think we're going to have a lovely spot on the platform to keep all of our recordings, and there will be homeworks, and there will be a final, and maybe a few quizzes. So we will send them out, I think, on the Telegram chat. Is everybody in Telegram? Marina says yes. Is anyone in this group not on Telegram? Okay, so look in your Telegram chats and you will find some goodies there over the next few weeks. And we'll meet again on Thursday, 9 o'clock Arizona time, World Central Time. Thank you so much for your attendance, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.